you here. And for everyone listening in, allow me to introduce you to my friend and fellow colleague in the Master Vintage program, Gauthier Genès. And he comes from a background in graphic designing and marketing, loves traveling, food, wine, and all kinds of spirits. He's always been very curious and a fanatic in the winemaking process, and he always got involved in the visits, always asked interesting questions. I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with him during some of my projects, and they were very, very successful. And I just felt his story was very inspiring for someone who came from a non-wine background and then entered into wine, got heavily into it, but also is balancing his niche for whiskey and other spirits as well. So welcome to the Da Vinci Code podcast, Gauthier. It's so nice to have you and see you in a long while.
Thank you, Naimisha, for having me, and thank you for introducing me so gently. The red wire in the end in my study background, so to say, would be spirits. I started, drinking good whiskey with some of my friends' parents when I was like 16, 17. Don't tell the law. And I started, collecting my own bottles when I got, to the legal drinking age. But yeah, after, a few years in marketing and graphic design, and after, a very strange, COVID period, I needed something real. And so, yeah, the answer was go back to the basics and get into wine and, something that you believe in. As you said, wine, food, spirits, it's in a big apple in the end, because you just take it from either side you want to. But it's a beautiful endeavor in the end, and specifically, wine production. Interesting thing for me. We started, our master's degree with the class with the vineyard internship and the winemaking internship. So it was, beautiful to see in the Douro what was the, the production level, the specifications, the techniques, each quinta has its own little techniques. So yeah, it's so diverse and just it's a world full of discoveries.
It truly is, and I'm just curious because you were collecting wine from a young age, and you were already quite aware. Would you say that being French and living in France, it was easy for you to choose wine over whiskey, maybe perhaps as a master's program or as a course?
Yeah, well, first there is no university grade level, distillation course. If you want to learn distillation, it's going to be a basic, so to say, but like a classic, professional.
Probably like a vocational course or just.
But I don't think that you will learn as much science as we did, or as much science that you would, in DNO to become an enologist in France, something like that. So yeah, it's very different.
Did you, since DNO is quite competitive and a lot of people, and especially a lot of international students as well, practice French so that they can pursue this program because it's specifically in French also. Was DNO an option, or did you learn about it much later?
No, DNO, I never considered DNO.
Okay.
Because I knew it was way too, scientific for me.
It's practically like chemical engineering for wine, I think.
Exactly, and it's basically a lab job.
Okay.
Also, and as much as I admire, people who spend time, learning all the chemical stuff, being in a lab most of the time is not for me. I'd rather have, a much more hands-on experience. Even if it means, getting scars, bruises, and all that. As much as I respect the endeavor and the function of an enologist, wasn't for me.
I understand, and it must have been. I understand not being able to find the right tools to do what you really wanted, but I think with the current program that we chose, we had a little bit of a cushioning in everything, whether it was production, whether it was viticulture or marketing. So it kind of set the basic foundation for each function. and I also was in hospitality, and then I needed something that could bridge the gap for me. Do tell us, how were your experiences during the actual internships, and what do you most enjoy about the industry?
Well, for the harvest internship we did in Portugal, it really was being a kid in a toy store because it was only discovery, and a very candid way of seeing what we saw. And looking back now, with more experience and a year full of production and viticulture in Burgundy, I look at it very differently, but still, with very. I'm still very grateful about this experience because it was my first as first things to do in a winery, and the opportunity was beautiful. It's making port and regular wines in a quinta. It's really beautiful. It was Quinta do Infantado where I was. It's a family owned company, so it's
No, I
I
still
like that.
remember their wine. So good.
Yeah, beautiful wine. Questionable state of winery, but that's up to them, and it's the family organization. It's complicated to run a business with your own family.
Absolutely. And I think traveling to different countries in Portugal, Italy, France, it made us also appreciate the uniqueness of different kinds of business models and different
Exactly.
kinds of winery establishments. From a graphic designing perspective, I just want to ask one question before we head into the technical stuff. That do you think that the current branding is affecting in terms of labels? Is there something that we can really do? Do you think it will make a difference, or do you to encourage people to buy more, or do you think, I mean, it's like a random thing?
No,
People who love wine, and people who are curious enough, the consumers are not going to change.
Well, as a former graphic designer, I can tell you this. Visual is key. It's like the fact that we could all recognize Gucci from LV monograms. It says something about visuals and their importance in a consumer market world as we live in. And definitely, a good labeling on your wines will change something because if you are, making, you're a new winemaker trying to make its way into the depths of, the Bordeaux appellation or something like that. If you want to say very classic, and do as Du Cru Caillou and the big ones, but you don't have the aura, to get there, it's not going to work. But if you play it, on a more, new kind of wine, new winemaking, getting a little bit outside, think outside the box, and so show that on your label, definitely can make a difference to me, especially with the new waves of consumer that we have, the new waves of caviste, these guys who are okay, they know they need some of the big names in their cellar, but they don't really care about the big names. They're here because it's a staple of the market rather than a real opportunity and a real discovery in terms of winemaking or wine experience in general.
That is so cool. And in a normal label, it would probably be, in a more traditional label, you'd have like the name of the chateau, the vintage, the description, and everything else. Is it possible, do you think in the future that there might be a need to transition from the traditional layout, or is that a legal obligation? Do you think it's possible to adapt it so that we still have the information, but it's also visually appealing?
Well, I think that for now we are not yet in such a digital era that we can, just implement all the legal information inside the QR code. Because in terms, of liquid quantity inside a set
Right.
bottle, level of alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
that the stores in France at least they are not going to say, yeah, yeah, please put it on our QR code if we don't see it, and we can't. take a bottle of a high-grade spirit rather than a
Yeah.
bottle of wine without showing it. Beautiful. No.
And one of our projects was about the adaptation of laws, and we were talking about the recent new law which came up by 2024 January, that everybody needed a QR code with the information of sulfites and what else was being in the wine. And I found that in Bordeaux, I found some bottles cleverly put the QR code ingrained on the bottle and not on the label.
Yes.
But it's very subtle, and I think that's always been the French way of being quite subtle and implicit of things and not really loud. You had the brilliant opportunity to work in Burgundy, so please do tell us about your experience and how you came across this opportunity, and a little bit about the estate and chateau.
Well, I discovered the estate and its owner, Thibaut, very, luckily it was through a video of French YouTubers who are really into, terroir-driven products, French gastronomy and stuff. It's called Gueuleton. It's actually a restaurant chain. They're very well known for that, and each restaurant is implemented in a specific terroir. And is 100% driven by the products of the terroir it's implanted in. So if you go to Limoges, to the restaurant there, you're gonna find pure terroir driven products from the Limoges area. If you go to Toulouse, it's gonna be for Toulouse products. If you go to Nantes, it's Nantes products. It's
wow, okay.
The wine list kind of stayed the same in between the restaurants, because they have they have their own platform of distribution for their restaurants, but they do have also little implantations of terroir, local terroir wines and such. And so on their video in Burgundy, it was like in 2017, something like that. I saw Thibaut, the owner, who was looking really young at the time, in between all the other winemakers, kind of 10, 15 years older. I was like, so young guy makes very good wine. I gotta look up the estate, and it kind of stayed in my books. And when came time during our first year to look for it was just very logical for me to try and get a place in his estate and work with him.
Wow, that's amazing. And which part of Burgundy, or which region of Burgundy were you in? Bourbon, as they say. Okay.
So the southern parts of Côte d'Or, if you will, from Beaune down to Meursault and stuff. So, Pommard is the first big village just south of Beaune when you want to get to Meursault. So it's very the estate, the clergy estate where I worked at. It's mainly Premier Cru from Volnay that we have, with some Clos Vougeot and some wines from Meursault too.
Lovely. And what was unique specifically about the terroir where you were at in this location?
Really interesting. The biggest specification, so to say, is that the Clerget family has a clos, so closed vineyard inside called the Clos du Verseil. In the family for 1.5 century, something like that, more than a century. And it's the soil there, the terroir of is comparable to the Grand Échezeau of La Romanée-Conti.
Oh wow!
So it's qualitatively, amazing wine, and comparable to some of the best that has been made in Côte de Nuit.
Wow,
so
wonderful!
It really gives you an edge, and when you try it's really special, really, really special.
That's so amazing. And I was interacting with a few students during my time in Medoc, and since it's quite a tiny village and there weren't as many restaurants established within the little city, so we would often have aperos hosting each other and discussing and talking about wine. And I met lovely people from Burgundy, and somewhere they kind of felt that in Bordeaux it's quite a little more like corporate, and it's not, the passion is has changed. The identity of Bordeaux has become something else than what it was. And he was a proud person from Burgundy, and he felt so happy, and he said that I love that we have so much passion, and we're so into we really take care of our wines. How would you be able to compare the styles of winemaking in Burgundy and Bordeaux, and how did you find the experience of winemaking practices in Burgundy?
Well, from what you say, I kind of agree that when you compare Bordeaux and Burgundy, Bordeaux is much more about aura, reputation,
Mm-hmm.
and years of good critics, especially for those who benefited from the Robert Parker era,
Mm.
which
Okay.
made Bordeaux the king of wines, and it was a very bold, heavy,
Mm-hmm.
tannin forward wines that needed to be aged for a long time and stuff. And yeah, the passion was replaced by the money. Not that it is true for all the winemakers there, but you can
Mm-hmm.
see that
In
having
general, it was very easy to kind of fall off the train
yeah,
into, okay, let's start collecting instead of somewhere it was quite, it was easy to get distracted, let's say.
yeah, exactly. And like you see very clean chateaus and wineries and stuff. Like it feels like no work's been done there. It's so controlled. Whereas in Burgundy, sometimes you get into some family estates. Yeah, it's not the most well groomed terrace or garden. It's rustic in a way, and I think this rusticity is also a proof that the passion has not fallen off the train in Burgundy at least, and not for now or not for everyone. But as much as Bordeaux bashing has been true for the last few years, Burgundy bashing is very well on the way. And as for Bordeaux bashing, it's deserved.
Oh, really?
Guys there have lost the passion. They only care about the last Porsche or the last Ferrari, and they've stopped going to the vineyard altogether. Do not know their terroir as well as their father or grandfather did. I don't.
Oh.
It's not true for my former boss Thibaut, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, he spent some time in the vineyard with us.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's a small operation that he's running, he tries to be in the vineyard as much as he can, especially during the growing season, because in the winter it's different.
Mm.
That season you have much less work. You don't have to be as much behind your plants, behind your vineyard as during the growing season, during spring, during the early summer and stuff. When you have to spray Bordeaux mixture every 2 3 days because it was raining and you're feeling mildew and stuff. That's different. But
It's so intense, and I agree. Like it's you have to adapt accordingly, and sometimes it's become definitely more generic than specific as it was. And Burgundy always had the plot specific, the OG plot specific approach, which now winemakers around the world are adapting. And since you did work in Burgundy, I really want to ask, did you see the film Sour Grapes? It's a really cool, more like a documentary about this person who is an American crime documentary about a wine fraudster, Rudy Kurniawan. And he came up in the early 2000s in wine auctions, and he would buy all the richest wines.
oh, it's about Rudy Kurnawa.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So, and there was a man from Burgundy who actually called him out because he found many vintages in his estate being produced, which them as a family have never produced, and there's not a single bottle even in
Mm.
Burgundy or in France. And he took he literally flew all the way and went to an auction, and this guy was based from Indonesia, and they created a false establishment showing that him and his brother were part of some kind of big business, but there wasn't. It was just an empty building once the CBI got involved, and many collectors of wine, they got ripped off for millions and millions of dollars, and it just I just thought that you should. I mean, I would recommend watching it, but
I
it's
do recall that
really.
he got caught because he tried to resell a DRC 45.
Yes.
Yes, because the thing is like there is no DRC 45. The
Exactly.
vineyard plucked out the ground like 2 years before the war. So yeah, whenever you
It's
see a DRC between 40 to 50, you're gonna be most of the time. Well, either the bottle is gonna be bad or it's a fake, especially for the 45 and 46.
Absolutely, and it's like, you have these numbers, and since you're also passionate about collecting alcohol and wine, how do you kind of know which years, like what do you look up or read up about specific vintages before collecting them, or do you just go by the tasting?
Well, I look up at the different profiles that were, described. Specifically, if it's a very specific year, you got to look at the profile and also look at other auctions, if there are any traces of said bottle. Like for me, when it's spirits, like what I usually collect, for rare bottles and stuff, I usually look at other, auctions catalogs, or I directly call, some other collectors I know, or some
Mm-hmm.
resellers where I've been, several times, and I've bought some stuff from them, or, gone through them to get into an auction, uh,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
That's pretty cool, and it's. I mean, I love wine, but I never really was able to afford the bottles I wanted to collect. And moreover, I think being in India and especially in the hotel industry, we also had the classic heavy reds from Bordeaux, and we didn't really have other regions or other international wines as much. The focus was never really there unless it was a specific Italian restaurant or a specific restaurant to a specific cuisine, which would have similar pairings. But otherwise, it was very difficult to get a more diversified wine list rather than just focusing on Bordeaux and the classics and the Grand Crus, etc.
Well,
Um,
it's kind of a
and
classic situation if you look at it, because it's much easier to sell, very
well known or.
in forward Bordeaux wines,
Mm,
very bold Bordeaux wines, because
mm.
it's gonna be strong, and they're like, that's Bordeaux wine, I know. So, if you try to sell Burgundy wine,
Yeah.
it's more difficult because the wine, it's Pinot Noir. It's much more subtle.
Mm.
It gives you more complex wine, easily and faster than Bordeaux.
Mm-hmm.
To clients that are, have the money but not
Yeah.
tasting knowledge, or the knowledge of wine in general, it's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna maybe taste kind of bland, or less fruit forward or tannin forward, something that, especially if they
Probably
come.
more poignant and more nuanced.
Yeah, exactly. Like they want something pungent, especially I think, for example, you come from India, where the cuisine is
Mm,
not about spices,
mm,
very strong spices with very subtle wines.
mm.
You get small effects in the end. And,
True. That's absolutely true. Like even with Syrah or Pinot Noir from Burgundy, even the same grapes from Bordeaux might pair better. In fact,
yeah,
with the
exactly.
taste profile of the ingredients as well. And I agree. Uh, and Burgundy also has its own day, Gelée Nouveau. And what is
That's
this really about? And because I feel like speaking with you, it's like talking to a little library. You always have information about almost every topic, and we always bring it back to wine. So this is something that it's is it a festival, or is it like a proper national day? What's the history behind it, and
for
what's the
Beaujolais Nouveau.
significance?
First, like if you speak to Burgundians, like from Côte de Beaune where I was, Beaujolais and Chardonnay, Côte Chardonnay and stuff, it's not in Burgundy. It's technically in the same region now, but to them, you know, you can't mix, water and oil do not mix. Okay, so But for Beaujolais Nouveau, it's kind of specific because back in the day, winemakers wanted to be able to sell their wine as soon as possible.
Mm.
This was not okay, for most people. So a law came in, and you couldn't sell the wine before the third Thursday of November.
Okay.
And so Beaujolais Nouveau came from that the goal
Wow.
was the third Thursday of November. So the guys would be making their wine in September,
Mm.
doing that, and on the bottling it less than 2 months after, and on the
Oh,
third
wow.
of November, every the Beaujolais Nouveau was being sold. And it's
So cool.
you can only achieve a wine so fast through carbonic maceration. So that's
Mm.
why it's such a specific profile with a bad reputation.
Mm.
Because back in the day, it wasn't made very you know intelligently, so to say, or like
Mm.
without any look at quality,
Mm.
at the spectrum of quality. Nowadays, it's very different. Most guys try to make it well, but it's still a very specific, flavor profile because you're on the bubble gum, on the kirsch, on the
And the
whole.
banana, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Banana, but like, banana essential oil for flavored yogurts and stuff. It's, yeah, kind of the same.
Do you usually have comparisons during these kind of tastings of from the same estate, but perhaps to 2021 and 2025 together, or you cannot
Usually
collect
the
or
guys, they
age
don't. The,
Beaujolais
the
Nouveau?
thing is like you won't get anything interesting from bottle aging with Beaujolais Nouveau because of the carbonic maceration. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
a really aged. Well, I know some guys, keep bottles of Beaujolais Nouveau from the last 20 years, but I do not think
It's
that.
meant to be appreciated in that moment.
Yeah,
It's
it's meant
not.
to be
It's not
drunk
aging.
young in a way. It has to be drank young. That's why it's made in the year, consumed in the year kind of wine.
Wow, and it's like you're just okay. We're seizing the year. This is how it was. This is what we
Yeah.
made, and this is what we think. That's very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing the history and a little bit about the place. And I still find it amazing to, you've taken a decision to step away from Bordeaux and explore a different territory. So you mentioned that you found this opportunity as an apprentice, and just curious because I've been receiving a lot of questions about what this apprenticeship program is, and do you have to be enrolled into a university to do it, or can you still apply as an apprentice for these jobs? And what is the eligibility criteria like? And how do you manage the whole working and studying? What is the funding like? And what's the reality on paper versus what you're actually doing? So do tell us about it.
Well, first, the legal system on apprenticeship is that you are a working student. Okay, so to describe it, so you are going to work in a company, and some of the time you're going to have to go back to class to learn. So that's just the big idea. Now, yes, you do need to be enrolled in some kind of course or university. Doesn't have to be a university per se. You don't have to go to University of Burgundy. It can be from a private school, but that has made the proper so to say arrangements with the French national education system
Mm-hmm.
to be enrolled within the apprenticeship specifications to be allowed to have students that are apprentices, which
Okay.
means that, in a sense, for example, in the example of a private school, it's very advantageous for people with not so much money
Mm-hmm.
because rather than paying your course a pretty hefty price in some private school, like 10K for us on the first year, uh, the company you're going to work at is going to pay for that, through also, some financial help of the French government.
Mm-hmm. So
So
it's practically like taking a student loan, but maybe even better because it's kind of, it doesn't haunt you.
exactly, it's kind of a student loan, but one you will never have to pay back in a sense,
Mm.
because you're not, the one taking the loan in the end.
Mm.
Just the reason for the loan, not the owner in a sense.
True, true, true.
Loan. And so this is really interesting when you don't have much money, or if you're like me, like you don't like to spend 24/7 with your butt in a class. You want to be doing the work hands-on and have a kind of hand in the mud experience. Get your hands dirty. And so the apprenticeship system is beautiful for that. You
Mm-hmm.
have the opportunity to be working. You're considered a full-on, worker, a full-on
Mm-hmm.
employee when you work.
So you're
So
equally dependent on.
yeah, exactly. You are equally dependent, but also in terms of if you're working in a big company, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
there is any kind of gratuity or advantages that other employees are entitled to, you are
Mm-hmm.
too. Like the company
Okay.
does not forbid you to take any kind of gratuity if others can have it. That's illegal.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that some company gets called back on, either
Mm-hmm.
by apprentices or the schools or the government directly, because the
Okay.
apprentices do not get the same kind of treatment that others do, and that's a problem.
Oh, okay. And
Because
do you get things for example, in the vineyard or in the work, we deal with a lot of equipment and we're prone to accidents, but do we have any kind of health insurance as well
yes,
included?
yes,
Okay.
that's a legal obligation in France.
Okay.
Your employer has to give you uh, the opportunity to have a medical insurance,
Okay.
and
And
most of the time, when you're an apprentice, he has to pay for it.
okay. Okay.
So that's an advantage. Also, most of the legal frameworks right now, for example, I finished my apprenticeship in Burgundy last early October,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still insured until October 2026
Okay.
by the
Some
same.
some places do have that continuity, I think.
Yes, it's an
Okay.
obligation. At least in France, it's an obligation.
Mm-hmm. And you came from a marketing background, and is it possible to like which kind of functions can we apply? Is it only for tech jobs or production jobs or skill based
No,
work?
no. I've started doing apprenticeship when I was in graphic design.
Okay.
My first job was apprentice graphic designer.
Oh wow.
Then
Okay.
I was apprentice project manager,
Okay.
and then I was apprentice communication officer when I was working
Okay.
in France.
So it can literally be for any field, any subject,
Exactly.
any kind of job. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to have a specific skill. Sometimes these kind of things, the pay is more if you're in a more skill-based thing, like being a chef, for example.
Mhm.
Because I can't think of anything else coming from the hospitality background, but just this moment. But I was just curious if this is limited or can this be applied to any kind of field.
No, it's
Any
basically
subject.
applicable to most fields, but there are still some fields that don't do apprenticeship when I
Okay.
personally think they should,
Okay.
such as nurses.
Oh, okay.
The nursing school system
Okay.
in France, that they make internships, but
Okay.
not apprenticeship.
Ah,
So
interesting.
they have
Okay.
several slot of mandatory internships.
Okay.
When I do think that putting it all under apprenticeship
Mm-hmm.
is more interesting, but it's not my job to decide that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, basically, like, and also like the system works in a way that your salary is
Mm-hmm.
dependent on your age
Okay.
and the numbers of year you've been doing apprenticeship.
Oh, okay. That
So that's why
I didn't know that your past experience made a difference too. I thought
no,
it was
it
just the
does.
age.
It does. If you
Okay.
stay in the apprenticeship contract system,
Mm-hmm.
your salary will only go up.
Okay, that's interesting.
Also, one thing that is interesting, you have the your raw salary and your net
Mm-hmm.
salary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in France, when you're an apprentice, the raw is the net. Like
Okay.
you get the
Oh,
same.
wow, that makes
You
a
pay
big
taxes on
difference
your salary.
when you have apprenticeship programs. And if
Yeah.
you, because I thought, okay, I was maybe 27 at the time when this topic was going up, 26, 27, and oh, I would be earning so and so. And I thought, okay, maybe, but I didn't realize that having been if you were a part of the apprentice system, then that would actually kind of compound your next opportunity too. That is so cool. And all this information, I feel like maybe it was there, but sometimes it's just so difficult to research, and having conversations makes it easier. And that's a reason to invite you, and to because you know so much, and having a French perspective is so important, especially when we're talking about wine as well,
Mhm.
from the OG wine capital of the world. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on how the apprenticeship works. And speaking of apprenticeships, you have been doing it throughout your life. And even though you came from a marketing, graphic communication kind of a background, and we did do some, harvest internships where people did get involved in production, but not everybody was passionate enough to take an apprenticeship in production.
Production.
So how was that, and what was your thought process behind getting into a more hands-on job?
Well, you have to be prepared for some sacrifices, like your comfort or your lower back. You, you have to be prepared to have some pain, bruises, some aches. I kind of twisted this finger during
Oh.
harvest, and it's still aching a lot since then. So yeah, you have to be prepared to get literally your hands dirty and get as many
Mm.
bruises as it needs. It's not unless you're in a state that mechanizes a lot of its
Mm. With
not
mechanical harvesting and other kinds of.
all mechanical vineyard works and stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
robots for a lot of stuff and pruning and so on. Um, you have to know that it's not going to be easy. It's not impossible, but it's not going to be easy. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're someone that doesn't like, to get cold, to get wet, to get the wind in your face, or
Not so outdoorsy.
yeah, you're not so outdoorsy as you say, maybe not the best course of action.
Yeah.
But if you're really prepared, to learn and get your hands dirty, get get the work done as anyone else
Mm-hmm.
in vineyard, you're at your place. Do not never assume that you know everything. Always be prepared to be like me. Be annoying. Ask question all the time.
Or me. Ask questions. Ask a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
questions.
Ask question. If and specifically like if your goal is to own your operation someday,
Mm-hmm.
like go for it. Like seriously, go for it. No, nobody's gonna stop you. And like if you show passion, especially in Burgundy, small family-owned estate like the one I worked at, it's gonna make the difference because the boss is really gonna see that okay, he wants it, he needs it. So the more
You
you
might
dedicate,
just get the job.
yeah, you
You
might
never
just get
know.
like you might just be so surprised at the responsibility they're willing to give you
Oh wow.
because
That's always been the case. Even during my internships in hotels, we always were told that it's fine if you didn't get through to any big names. But if you actually join a smaller company, you're given more responsibility, and you're dependent on more, and you learn a lot more. And would you recommend this more for people who learn by doing and getting involved into the production?
yeah, specifically like if the process of things is what interests you, production is the way. But also like do not think that if you work in an estate you're gonna do vinification all year round. Vinification
Mm.
harvest is just the one time. On so, of course, it doesn't. You don't do it in a day. It's a matter of several weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But out of these, let's say 5 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
you have 46 weeks to go until next
Yeah.
harvest. And it's
Mm-hmm.
mostly vineyard work. So
So it's
unless you're
not
in a
just.
big operation, seller stuff
Mm-hmm.
can be very small in the end in
Mm.
terms of time that it
The
costs you.
actual work in a cellar is the time spent is much less, and
Yeah,
I think that's very true. And I'm glad you brought it up because everybody thinks that we're constantly making wine all year round, but it's that's not the case. We have to wait for the grapes to ripen, and the most of the work is actually in the vineyard. And if you sign up for a job in production, then you're an apprentice both in the vineyard and in the cellar, not just for it. And so, what were your biggest takeaways from this experience and your after you entered the world of wine?
well, from what I saw in Burgundy, the quality starts by the way they're working the vineyard.
Mm.
If they're using chemical weed removers and stuff, they're not really into quality. At the vineyard, at our vineyards at the Clerget Estate, when there was tidy work like removing weeds that were too close to the vines, to
Mm-hmm.
with the tractors, the bobard, it was handwork. You get a little pickaxe and you just go get it off the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the growing season, it was mostly that we did, being hutched out, looking at the ceps and
Mm-hmm.
weeds, plucking out new vine branches that were
Mm-hmm.
a good way. So it's
Almost
precision.
every action is very precise and
Yeah,
planned and has like thought out,
exactly.
anticipating what the consequences of it would be as well. I
Like
think
always being
people.
on the lookout, like, so yeah, we did that in this vineyard, but the next vineyard
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do, it's a little bit different. They get more of this,
Mm-hmm.
more of this. So two of you are gonna do this, and two of you are gonna do
Ah,
that.
okay.
So it's really,
It's
precision.
very adapted to each kind
Yeah,
of pruning, each kind of
yeah.
variety, and the soil and everything, and the history that the land carries over the years and how everything's been grown. Wow, it's really amazing to get a more in person or at least a vicarious experience through you. And I feel like Burgundy is still it's known, but I don't think people realize the specificity of what the details and the little minute things that matter and actually make a difference and actually make quality wine. And I'm more about the apprentice program. How did you manage? How did you find working and studying together? I mean, you're used to it, but if
Yeah.
someone who's stepping into it as a very new thing, then what could you share some mental preparation that you must be prepared for?
Well, it's all about the sacrifice that you're ready to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's the problem. Problem. Well, it's the problem and the solution. Like if you're willing to sacrifice, on after class drinks and stuff when you really have some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for the times that you get off the job, especially like if you're working production in wine, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or you're in the vineyard all day, you get back home, it's a bit late and you're tired. You're physically tired,
Mm.
getting a full workout during the day, and it's a challenge to take a shower, have dinner, and then be like, okay, so no, I'm gonna work for at least an hour or two, because I have
And to
this.
study and to actually
Exactly.
work
Yeah.
towards your project.
So
And I think in the second year, I mean, it seemed quite more challenging because in our program we had our thesis and we had the W set,
yeah,
and that was a lot of studying beyond the, I felt it this way, but I'm not sure if you felt it too, or maybe it was because even I wasn't an apprentice student, I was a regular student, but suddenly it just felt like the program's actual studying just went straight from 1x to 2.5x in the second year.
No,
But is that a normal thing for most programs, or did it just feel quite loaded with
I
the
think
WSET
ours
too?
was particular because, as you said, we had this double challenge,
Mm-hmm.
the thesis and the
Mm-hmm.
W set,
Mm-hmm.
because also it's not just the W set, it's
Mm-hmm.
W3,
Yep.
the last one before
The third
being
one, yes.
a monster in the state of wine, you know. So it's, yeah, a lot of work because W set level 3, it's between 95 to 120 hours of personal work that you have to
Yes.
put in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the thesis, it's about the same, or if not the double, if your subject is complex. So yeah.
So in the future, do you see how did you find now, or what are your plans after this? What are you open to?
I'm open to lots of opportunity in the wine business, especially for like import and export of wine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'd be looking forward at a position abroad because I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
work in Latin America, or any Spanish speaking country really.
Mm-hmm.
But South Africa and most of the English or Commonwealth countries are of
Mm-hmm.
interest to me. But as we said, the market is difficult right now.
Mm-hmm.
Many opportunities, but we keep looking. But yeah, and right now, I wanted to do production because I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have felt legitimate to sell wine without having
Mm.
making it myself before. And I do think that
Absolutely.
a hands-on production experience gives
Yeah.
you much more legitimacy to speak, about the processes, the way things are made, with either it being in the vineyard or in the
Mm-hmm.
winery. You know.
I completely agree, and I think sometimes and most often than not, like we agree and we think in a similar way, because I also chose. I was constantly pushed to do tourism and enotourism, but then I
Yeah.
specifically chose a production heavy or a viticultural based internship for my thesis and topic too, because I also agree that if I have not done it, then how can I convince someone else and have the
Yeah.
right knowledge and ability? And how could I ask? How could I answer questions if I had something? There's so much that you can learn in a book, but theory is it's like a story. You read it, you have an opinion, but when you actually do it, you realize the why behind something. And I think that's constantly what pushed me to do it. And it's been lovely to have you here, and I'm sure there are so many more other questions which a lot of people didn't have a chance to ask. And could you share your contact details, or how people can reach out to you for queries and opinions and just advice in the industry, and a parting message for any newcomers or any people coming from non-wine backgrounds in the industry, please?
Well, I'm available on LinkedIn, at Gauthier Genès.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they can find me, at the same name on Instagram too.
Mm-hmm.
My account is private, but I answer most of the messages I get. And so, yeah, my feel free to share my email. You have it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, if anyone in the industry wants to reach me, the best would be LinkedIn or my Instagram.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you. I know there were many reschedulings happening with a lot going
No
on with
worries with
me,
that.
but I'm glad, and thank you so much for your time and presence. And I hope you have a lovely new year. And hopefully, we will meet soon. And maybe perhaps the next Beaujolais Nouveau, we can taste it
Yes,
together.
with pleasure. You name it. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.